To the northeast of Ukraine, the Sumy region, where evacuations are being expanded. People have been ordered to leave more than 11 villages. A latest intelligence report suggesting that more than 50,000 Russian troops are amassed on the other side of the border. A spokesperson for the Ukrainian border service saying Russia is poised to attempt an attack. Let's go to Kiev. Let's bring in Emmanuelle Chaze, our correspondent there. Good to speak to you this evening, Emmanuelle. First, give us your sense of events unfolding in Sumy.
Well, first off, Gavin, just as we speak, just a few moments ago, there was a general air raid alert over the eastern part and the central part of Ukraine with a threat of ballistic missiles all over those regions. And apparently they are focusing on a Sumy region. And it shows you just how Russia continues to attack Ukraine, not only on the front line, but only through the air. And the situation is particularly dire for border regions with attacks intensifying, particularly in Sumy region, where 11 villages, you've mentioned it earlier, have been evacuated. That means order of mandatory evacuation have been issued, and those of the people who want can be evacuated by the authorities. It doesn't mean that all those operations are smooth, because even when there are such humanitarian steps being taken, well, evacuation convoys are being targeted by missiles, glide bombs, drones also. So the local population is endangered. They're at all stages. If they stay at home, they are at danger, at risk of dying in bombing. If they leave, they are at risk of being targeted on the road. So there's a very dire situation for those of the locals who choose to stay. That being said, there's already tens of thousands of people who have been moved from that border region due to the continuous hostilities there.
So we are, less than 48 hours away from this next set of talks, Emmanuelle, due to take place, we think, yet to be confirmed absolutely by Ukraine, I think, but in Turkey on Monday. I want to listen first. This is Keith Kellogg, Special Envoy for the US to Ukraine. He was asked a question by a reporter this weekend whether he thought the idea of Ukrainian admission to NATO could be a thing. He went further than that. Let's take a listen.
That's one of the issues that Russia will bring up. And they're not just talking Ukraine. They're talking the country of Georgia. They're talking Moldova. They're talking, obviously, Ukraine. And we're saying, okay, comprehensively, we can stop the expansion of NATO coming close to your border. That's security concerns for them. But that's a presidential decision. It's not my decision to make. And these are the things we go to the president and say, Mr. President, this is what we talked about. This is what everybody's willing to do. Are you willing to accept that? Are you willing to go with it? And then, hopefully, then we'll have a negotiation, a discussion between President Trump, President Putin, and President Zelensky, and get an end state to this and stop the killing.
I mean, we've become used to kind of the narrative, but if we just step back from that a second, Emmanuelle, that kind of breaks away from 3 decades of diplomacy, always to say that it's Ukraine's right, not necessarily to join NATO, but it's not for Russia to determine what the sphere of influence is. And also the Czech foreign ministers responded to that, saying you are repeating Russian playbook narratives there. I don't know if Kiev have responded, but what's your sense about the mediator going into this meeting saying that?
Well, it shows what Ukrainians have feared since the disaster that we've all witnessed in the Oval Office when President Zelensky, had a pretty fruitless meeting, to say the least, with Donald Trump and J.D. Vance. And we saw a real U-turn in U.S. policy in terms of support of Ukraine just on the grounds that Ukraine is a sovereign country, is defending itself against an external aggression that it hasn't provoked. And here, not only do we see that for the US, the defense of Ukraine seems to be more transactional than something that has to be done on grounds of international law, humanitarian international law, but also simply because Ukraine is still a sovereign country, and it has been despite 2014, despite 2022. And here, with those latest words from the US special envoy to Ukraine, we really see that indeed there is a Russian narrative being repeated there, that in fact Ukraine has no agency over its own borders, over its own future, and that Ukraine ought to cave in to every single Russian demand, especially when it comes to its territorial integrity, especially when it comes to the terms of a possible peace. There should be, if we follow this logic, Kiev should, like I said, just cave in to every Russian demand, and it's simply impossible from Kiev's perspective because it would be unconstitutional to withdraw troops from its own territories, for example. This is a demand they cannot accede to. That being said, we will see Ukraine ready to talk to their Russian aggressor simply because Ukraine has shown time and again that they were ready and that they were willing to discuss a ceasefire, they were willing to discuss a peace, but we just see that Russia doesn't seem to be ready to make any concession and it follows through its logic of aggression against the neighboring country, Ukraine.
Very briefly, Emmanuelle, this time last week we were talking about how little sleep you had and tens of thousands of people in Kiev as well, the all-night sirens going off, the unprecedented single-day bombardment. We're hearing of bombardment again in different parts of Ukraine, with the sirens going off again last night.
Well, last night again we had dozens of drones thrown by Russia against the country. For the past 24 hours, 10 people died, over 30 people were injured. This is a sadly daily occurrence for Ukrainian population, and we have to keep in mind that when we talk about those figures, each and every one of those persons had their own story, their own family, and this replica showed in those indiscriminate strike against the population, and that's what Ukrainians still experience every day. They really don't have the feeling that a ceasefire is coming or that a peace is coming.
Emmanuelle, good to talk to you. Emmanuelle Chaze, our correspondent in Kiev.